Hey, Randy Joe here, and this is 1001 Reviews, the series where I plan on reviewing every single album from the 1001 Albums to Listen to Before You Die book. And today we are looking at Stereolab's 1996 album, Emperor Tomato Ketchup. Amazing title, by the way. Emperor Tomato Ketchup was released in '96 underneath the Elektra label with producers John McEntire and Stereolab. The art direction is uncredited, with nationality being from France and UK, and a running time of 57 minutes and 14 seconds. With the opening track, Metronomic Underground, you have a pretty concrete idea of what this genre's style and sound is going to be like because of how much it represents the overall theme and complexity of this album. The style of Stereolab is really well shown off in this first song here and kind of gives an idea of the rest of the album with just how simple and laid back it seems on the surface. Stereolab has a way of sounding extremely chill and laid back when in actuality a lot of this music is actually super complex and layered. This opening song in particular has this repeating vocal line delivered over and over again that eventually gets so ingrained into your brain that it becomes like a monotonous loop. And even though it is not said in English, it is said so much throughout this track and repeated so much that it becomes something that you are just repeating by the end without even fully realizing it. It has a way of really hypnotizing and taking hold of the listener. On top of that, the jazzy and long song structure really make this song one to zone out to in such a great way. I mean, it is truly hypnotic in its delivery. And then there's also the fantastic second track here, which is titled Sibyl's Reverie. Am I pronouncing that one right? Correct me if I'm wrong. However, I will say that this track is fantastic for its introduction of strings into the sound here. And the vocals on this track are also more fluid than they are on the opening track. But what really makes this track so great is the way that the strings take hold and have these crescendo-like moments throughout the song, maybe a few times, as well as these slightly off-kilter synth-like effects that come in and out of the mix, paralleling alongside these crescending strings. On top of that, you also have the vocals and backup vocals that are spliced from the left and right channel of your ear. So on the left and right, you have these backup singers, as well in the center of the channel of the music here, you have the main vocal being delivered. And it really makes for a large scale and cinematic approach to a pretty grand and large scale feeling song. There's also the fourth song, Les Yper Sound. And I think it's safe to say that Stereolab on a lyrical level is often pretty vague and up in the air, not really blunting in too much force with their lyrics, but I will say that in this song it seems much more straightforward and much easier to read into, where they speak of war and its nonsensicalness as they are dividing the sides here, dividing people into separate groups, also they could come together and attack each other in the end. And really kind of tackles the idea of countries and patriotism and how at the end of the day these things do more harm than they do good. And with a topic like this where it seems pretty serious and has a pretty heavy stance being put behind it, Stereolab manages to make it sound very cute and fun and very up in the air. It is a super airy and enjoyable track through and through and doesn't really seem like it would be a very serious song on the surface. And I think what really makes this song so enjoyable, especially for me, is the fact that it's very reminiscent of Brian Eno's early experimental rock albums, such as Here Come the Warm Jets and Taking Tiger Mountain by Strategy. And anything that really accurately manages to capture the tone and feel of the great Brian Eno, I for sure will love. And then on the sixth track, OLV 26, you have this pretty heavy synth that comes in at the very start of the track and carries on throughout the entire runtime. It's a pretty heavy, powerful, heavy synth. I've said heavy too many times, but the thing is that this synth does carry from beginning to end of this song, and as it's going along, it is built upon by other sound effects and other really zany, out-of-this-world sort of soundscapes that Stereolab continues to work in through this album. It's a super fun and upbeat track that starts off with a very simple concept of just this heavy synth, and as it adds sounds, it becomes more textured than ever before and gets extremely layered and in-depth and flourishes into pretty much something fantastic. And this is another fantastic song off this album that perfectly captures what Stereolab is setting out to do. And this track is then followed by the seventh song, Noise of the Carpet. And where many tracks on this album can be described as ahead of their time, Stereolab in general can be described as ahead of their time, this song in particular, Noise of the Carpet, is very much a great example of a specific sound that was ahead of the time in '96. I mean, something like this wasn't really around at the time and really took hold of the music scene in the mid-2000s. This really feels like something that would come out in the mid-2000s, but it's crazy to me that this actually came out in '96 because it is so incredibly ahead of its time and really taking on a early version of what the indie scene would later be. When people think of your typical indie song, they would think of something like this. And if you really want a song where you can see the influence of Stereolab, then I would recommend Noise of Carpet because it is a really good indicator of just the overall power of this band before it even took off. And then finally, I want to talk about the title track, Emperor Tomato Ketchup, which seems like a really silly title for both the song and the album. It's pretty out there, it's a little zany, and feels like almost cartoonish in a way. And that's why this song is so fantastic, because it replicates that idea of zany silliness. Because even though this song carries throughout with this punchy drum, a guitar, and a really great bass line, it also has some really silly vocals and some strange, out-of-this-world, alien-like sound effects being applied to the sounds here. It has this very strange tornado-like style of production where everything is shifting and whirling around you and really captures just the absurdity and the silliness of this album. And I think that is why I like it so much. This is a perfect example of the sound that dominates this album. And to make this the title track of the album is really just the perfect icing on the cake here. It is perfectly describing what you're going to get here if you hear this song. And it's a fantastic song through and through. The really alien, strange effects that are being slapped on feel really cute and specific and personality filled. And that's what this album is so great for, is it takes a lot of very strange ideas such as 60s jazz and turns it into a contemporary setting with indie sounds and politically driven lyrics, which ultimately leads to a very unique and character-like album. Stereolab really works in their own realm of music that I haven't really heard by many other artists before, and I think that makes this like a perfect itch to scratch in a way. I mean, there is something about this that is just so charming. And with that all being said, I'm very grateful for having heard this album. I'm glad I found it in this book because I do feel like I got something out of this album that I've never really heard before, and it really stands on its own. So with that being said, this album got a soft rating of a 9.1 out of 10, and I will leave the hard rating at 9.1 out of 10 as well. And of course, since I do feel like I got something unique out of this and got a great experience out of it, I would go ahead and give this an E for essential. So worth a listen, go ahead, listen to it before you die. Anyways, that pretty much does it for this review. Let's go ahead and see what the next album you're going to listen to is in the 1001 Albums to Listen to Before You Die book. Alright, random number generator, 1 to 1001, generate. 712 is the next album we are listening to, which is on the list. 712 being Morrissey's Your Arsenal. So go ahead and listen to that, and I will review it in exactly 1 week from now. And if you like this video, please hit like and subscribe if you want to follow along and listening to every single album from the 1001 Albums to Listen to Before You Die book. I announce the next album at the end of every single video, so please follow along and click through to see what will be heard next in this book. And as always, my name is Randy Joe, and I am signing off.